This is Steve Peck here. I'm the chair of the Douglas County Republican Party, and I appreciate you joining us for this inaugural podcast. We're going to have a conversation this morning around an important topic, property taxes, and I actually am privileged to have our own Toby Damisch here, our assessor in Douglas County, with us on today's first podcast. Actually am privileged to have our own Toby Damisch here, our assessor in Douglas County, with us on today's first podcast. So I hope to ask a series of questions that will hopefully bring some light and generate some conversation to a hot topic here, not only in Douglas County, but across the state. So Toby, thanks for joining us. Can you, before we get into the specifics, and there's a lot of specifics, we're going to try to keep it at a conversational level just because this is a complex topic and we want to make it as accessible as possible for as many people as possible. But give us a flavor of who you are. How long have you been in Douglas County? What's your family composition like? And how did you come to this role?
Well, hi, Steve, and thanks for having me today. It's lovely to be here, and I appreciate your time and your engagement in this matter. It's such an important topic. I've been doing this type of work for a long time now. This is my 25th year in this business, and there's never been such an impactful period because of the various things that are happening all at once. And it's really a perfect storm and property taxes right now in a bad way, and it's got to be dealt with. So one of the things that we've got to do is help inform the public. So I appreciate you having me on and helping me do that. As I said, I've been doing this for 25 years. Marcy and I met here in Colorado in early 1998, which is right after I moved here from Iowa. I graduated from Iowa State University with a planning degree and did work like that for a while. That led me into real estate appraisal, which led me into this work. And as I mentioned, I've been at Douglas County since 1998, so I know how it works as much as really anyone. Your typical county assessor comes and goes because we have term limits in Colorado. And so I've seen a lot of that, including the late 90s when we had 20-30% increases in reappraisals back then. But what we've got going on now is really something else. I mentioned my wife, Marcy. We've got a son, Will, who's 17. He's a junior at Legend. We love Colorado. We've been in Douglas County the whole time, been married that whole time, and never going to leave. So I've got a lot vested here and really want to see that this situation resolves itself in a manner which doesn't harm our citizens.
Excellent. Well, and so you're a property owner yourself.
Well, yeah. So I live in the Pradera area, and we've been here since 2014, lived in a different part of Douglas County before that. And so I experience what we're experiencing here just like anyone else. In fact, my value this year went up more than 50%, like a lot of people's have. So
50%.
Yeah.
Do you think that I know you've been talking about this tax issue nonstop here? Do you think that it's on most people's radar, or are people going to be surprised?
I think people are shocked, and the reason I think that is because we hear about it about once in email or phone calls about once every minute, every day, from morning to evening. We have at Douglas County Assessor's Office, we've got a record number of phone calls, record number of emails. Anyone who is on social media knows that this is the hot topic, other than your normal, regular, run-of-the-mill topics that occur on social media. This is it. And there's a lot of people that are surprised and a lot of people that are agitated, and frankly, they should be. So no surprise there. I've been talking about this for 2 years because we saw it coming. But until you do something like send out notices of value to 140,000 people, you really don't get people's attention. But this has.
Yeah, I imagine a situation where you're ringing the bell, ringing the bell, ringing the bell, and everybody's kind of like going about life as normal. But this is the kind of the plight of weathermen too. Hey, folks, there's a storm coming. Hey, guys, I'm serious. The projections look bleak. I recommend leaving your house and finding safety. Is there any safety for us in this equation?
That's a good question. I appreciate the analogy. I would say that we are right in the middle of that storm right now, and we're not sure when it's going to end, but it certainly started, and it's feeling pretty ugly. So the answer is there may be, but it's not looking great right now. Where we're at is all the county assessors in Colorado have completed their reappraisals for 2023. What that does is update values from June of 2020 to June of 2022. And in that time frame, Colorado had the largest appreciation in real estate in any other 2-year period in the history of Colorado, or the history of tracking it. And that's what has led to these notices of value showing such high increases. And so this is really the first step. What people need to understand is that their taxes aren't just based on the assessor's value, they're also based on the assessment rate and your local mill levy. And so the fights on those two components, all three components of your tax bill calculation, are happening right now. We're right in the middle of it. And so, Steve, that our appeal process has just begun. And so that deals with the first part of the formula. I'm sure we're going to talk about the fact that Gallagher's been repealed, and now the assessment rate's in the hands of the state legislature. And that's a battle that we're having right now. And then later this year, we're all going to have to talk about mill levies, which we don't usually talk about. This year, we better talk about it, or we're going to be paying higher taxes.
Okay, so I don't live and breathe these terms, and I imagine somebody watching this today probably might not also. They might be in my camp, just a dad going about their life, going about work. So okay, if I get this right, tell me if I'm wrong. Our property taxes across the state, this isn't just unique to Douglas County, but our property taxes are really comprised of 3 different elements, right? The valuation, or the assessed valuation, right? Which is different than what Zillow might say.
Yes.
So you've got your valuation is one element. The second element is what the state legislature taxes us at, right? Which is 6.7%, if I have that right. And then the third element is the mill levies. What is that right? And then what the heck is a mill?
Yeah, you got it. So let's hit that last part right off the bat, because we don't talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about the assessor's value and that driving taxes, and the assessment rate driving our tax rate. But we really don't talk a lot about mill levies. And so here's how that works. You and I both own a home in certain locations in the county. It doesn't matter in any location in the state for that matter. That home at that location pays into a number of local governments, local, what we call taxing districts. Some examples of those include your city, your county, your school district, your library district, your metropolitan district, water district, sanitation district, and so on and so forth. In Douglas County, the average home is paying into 8, 10, or 12 different taxing authorities. There is a misconception that the mill levies that those individual districts charge are in control of someone other than them. For instance, that they're in control of the county commissioners or the county government, and they're not, or they're in control of state law, and they're really not unless they're Tabor restricted. And so each of those taxing entities at the end of every year determine their own mill levy. And what a mill levy is, it's an amount of tax. It's like a tax rate. Think of it as a percentage, which gets applied to the assessed value, which then affects the tax bill through the tax calculation. And so when you stack all those mill levies that each of the authorities charge together, you get really the full tax rate for the local area where each of our homes sit respectively. In my particular case, I'm in a neighborhood that does not have a metropolitan district, and I am also in an unincorporated part of Douglas County. So I don't pay into a metro district, and I don't pay into a city district. And so my mill levy where my home is at is a little lower below average for Douglas County. So what a mill is, it's just a fractional percentage, which essentially amounts to a tax rate. And the higher the mill is, the higher the tax rate is for a particular area. The lower the mill is, the lower the tax rate is for a particular area. If I could just finish with an example, because this is really interesting. If you look at the total mill levies for all the local authorities in downtown Castle Rock, that equals under 70. I think it's about 68 or 69. If you go to certain subdivisions and parts of the county where there are metropolitan districts that have high levies, their total levy can be as high as 170 or 180. So if you just do that math in your head, you could take a home that is valued at X dollars, say 600,000, and in downtown Castle Rock, it's paying a certain amount. You go to one of these subdivisions, it's paying almost triple. And so these local mill levies make a huge difference in our final tax.
Okay. I got to jump in. So, and this whole mill conversation is just, again, one of the three elements that drive our overall property. So I'm afraid to ask, and I don't expect you to get in the specifics of mine, but I got my notice yesterday. Here, I've got it right here. I opened it up. I kind of like did one of these things. Let me look at it this way. See how bad it was. I didn't want to look. Like I wanted to see, but I didn't want to look. So I'm in Highlands Ranch. My guess is I know the Highlands Ranch Metro District has a mill. The Douglas County School Board has a mill that they'd like to increase. We can come back to that later. I'm guessing fire protection, right? South Metro Fire District, libraries, the county, and all these things combined. I mean, I'm not an exclusive neighborhood, I don't think. I hope I'm bending towards the Castle Rock 68 to 70. How can I find out my mill burden?
Good question. Yeah. So in Highlands Ranch, you have the benefit of being in one of the probably best run metropolitan districts in the country, to be honest with you. Why is that? Because they've done strong financial management, such as pay off their bonds, which you think happens all the time. It doesn't. Some bonds, frankly, from metropolitan districts will never get paid off. That sounds like it's in the weeds, but it's really important. I think Highlands Ranch's mill levy is under 11 or 12, whereas many metropolitan districts have levies of 30, 40, 50, and higher. So they've done strong financial management to get their debt paid off, and they have a mill levy which is used for operating. You're also not in a city there, and so you're not having to pay into a city property tax, which is great, not just for property taxes, but sales tax. You go buy a car, and you don't have the weight of that local city tax on top of it. So Highlands Ranch is in pretty good position there in terms of total mills, probably below the Douglas County average. What can you do about that? Where can you find it? Douglas County government provides some great resources for this. So for instance, you can go to the Douglas County Assessor webpage, mine, and look up your property and scroll down and drill in and see all those taxing authorities that you pay into. Even better, you can expand that section and see their levies that they're charging right now and contact information to reach out to them. And so our website has an incredible amount of information to help the citizen navigate this problem. And that's one of them. Another tool that Douglas County has, and Douglas County Treasurer Dave Gill and former Assessor Lisa Frizzell partnered in a website that we call yourdugcotaxes.com. And that is a map which shows the total mill levies all across the county. So you can poke around that map and see where the levies are really small on average, like downtown Castle Rock. and where they're really, frankly, quite large. Like in Castle Rock itself, there's some areas in Founders where the total mill levy is quite high. Same true with the subdivision Sterling Ranch up there by Highlands Ranch. So you can see those sort of extreme ranges as well as everything that's in between. But to your question, that is another source where you can drill in and see, okay, what are the individual levies that are being charged by each of these authorities, and who is running these authorities and what their contact information is. And I say this year, more than ever before in the history of Colorado, it's important to know, in fact, crucial to know, who your taxes get paid to.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear you loud and clear on that. And I just want the broader audience to know, because we're going to put this on Facebook. We'll put it out on Twitter. We'll put it out in the various. We'll put it on our county Republican Party website. Douglas County, I like to say, I'd like to see Douglas County become the Florida of Colorado. And we're already kind of like halfway there. We're governed by Republicans here. And it always makes me chuckle when we get Democrats that move here that, talk badly about Douglas County as if there's a gun to their head making them stay here. I mean, if you want to live in into another area that has, high tax rates, high crime, all the benefits of that come with a metropolitan hellscape, those are available to you, but they're not going to be in Douglas County. So I would just like everybody to know that in Douglas County, we have 3 county commissioners, and have not just these 3, but for many decades, we've had Republican leadership here. So taxes are generally pretty low, or as low as we can possibly make them, because of Republican leadership. We also talk about, it's Republican led, it's community driven and publicly, and how's the phrase go? Community driven and something led.
Republican led, something like that.
Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I want to add something in here. Here's a little anecdote. One of the many property tax bills that are in front of the legislature this year, and I don't know if Senator Basley is going to get this passed or not, but it's Senate Bill 108, and it gives permission for local taxing authorities to temporarily reduce their mills by applying a negative mill levy that's temporary in order to manage this situation of higher assessments. But what's interesting about this bill is taxing entities can already do it. They can already do it. In fact, our own county commissioners, speaking to your point, have been issuing credit levies on the Douglas County government total mill for several years to return money back to the citizens. So our 3 county commissioners committed to doing that even before this property value explosion happened. And when you look to other areas that maybe don't value the same things, some of them have refused to use the credit levy, and they say they've been afraid to apply it because maybe it wasn't lawful, or they weren't sure if they lose money permanently, or it would get set in stone, and so on and so forth. But at Douglas County, that's not how we roll. And our county commissioners have shown proof of that, to your point. And that is the fiscal conservative nature value system coming into play right in front of our eyes.
Okay, so that's very helpful, because if the county commissioners are doing that, then it stands to reason that your South Metro Fire District, your library board, your water board, all of these different boards that are out there that could increase your mills, that will see a windfall come in, could credit that all back. It's just a matter of doing so. And this wouldn't require action from Jared Polis, correct? This wouldn't even require any kind of passage from the Colorado State Legislature. Is that right?
100% correct. They could do this. They've been able to do it. It's been proven by Douglas County and a handful of other entities throughout the state, literally a handful, so very few. It's not been challenged, so I don't know what everyone's waiting for. What's interesting about this bill, that the governor's bill right now, Senate Bill 303, is that they're, through all these sort of little idiosyncrasies of the bill, they're encouraging local authorities to adjust their levies. And I'm like, they've always been able to do this. And I think the governor's bill is trying to then give him credit for making them do it, but the bill does not force them to do it. It does not force anyone to reduce their levies, despite the way they talk about it. And so when the rubber meets the road, his bill is not much of a tax reduction at all. In fact, I view it as locking in the largest tax increase in the history of Colorado. And I've said that over and over again, and anything they changed about the bill doesn't change that fact. Anyway, so these local authorities have been able to do this, and I'm sure our county commissioners are going to prove it again that we've been able to do it. And these levies, by the way, get determined in the fall, at the end of the year. And we'll see who steps up and does the right thing. Every one of these districts, library, fire, water, every one of them will have the ability to do this. The only ones that I'm aware of that will not is the base levy inside the school district. And that's a whole other conversation talking about school finance, but the school board will not be able to reduce their 27 base mills because that's locked in statute. Interestingly, to me, the governor could have, in Senate Bill 303, done something with that. And guess what? They chose not to.
Okay. So again, getting back, big picture, the three elements that I have control over, right? I can't change his legislature. I can't even really. I mean, I can petition the heck out of these guys, and I will. And I encourage everybody listening to write your state legislature, your state rep, your state senator. Also, get in touch with whoever your taxing authorities are. Right? We've been talking about them. Your library board, your water board, your metro board, your city boards and whatnot. But we don't have immediate control over that. The only thing that we have control over really is this valuation piece. And even that is kind of, it's not totally up to us. So let's say that's where I want to start, right? I'm freaked out that my property taxes are going to increase by 50%. I think the first thing that I would want to do, and we'll come back to the Senate Bill 303 that comes from the governor's office. But how do I go about, if I'm Johnny Q Public out there, how do I go about challenging the assessed value? And is there any point? What if it actually increases? Like maybe the county says, hey, it's X number of dollars. I go in there, I have a challenge, and they come back and say, hey, surprise, it's actually $75,000 more than what we thought.
No, that's such a good question, Stephen. What a great segue. As you mentioned, there are three components to the tax bill. And the assessment rate, what we as citizens can do about that now is contact elected officials, in particular lawmakers and the governor, and encourage them to deal with the assessment rate because that is controlled by the state. But other than that, what can be done right now is to address your county assessor, the people like me. So we've issued notices of value on May 1, and they were in the mailbox on that day. So in Douglas County, everyone should have them by now. In fact, throughout the whole state of Colorado, everyone should have them by now. And Colorado property tax law is great in this area in that it provides citizens a wide path for engaging your government on the subject matter by appealing your value. And so in Douglas County, we send everyone a postcard, and there's several ways you can appeal. You can fill out that postcard, release the back cabinet, tear it, fill it out, return it, and you've filed an appeal. The second way you can file an appeal is online. We've got a great online appeal application at our website. Again, that's www.douglas.co.us. And you can navigate there. There is an online appeals button you can hit and start an appeal. And in about 12 clicks, you can make that happen. We've made it as easy as we can possibly make it for people to engage us in this way. So this is a real option. It's a real thing, and it can really work. And you had a question there is like, is it worth it? What are the risks? So let me talk about that for a minute. In a given reappraisal year, we will adjust between 25 and 50% of those appeals that come in. I hear people tell me all the time, I always appeal. I never get a reduction. It doesn't work. There's no point. And I would just disagree with that. There is a point because it will save you money if you're successful. I suspect this year we're going to have not just a record number of appeals, but we're going to have a record number of adjustments. So the rate of our adjustment is going to be higher than it's ever been before. And the reason I think that is in the first week. First of all, in the first week, we've had as many appeals in 1 week as we did for residential property as we did in a month 2 years ago. So it's incredible the appeal rate we're getting. So people know that they can do this, I believe, and they're really engaging us on it. And I think that's a good thing. Now, I think that we're going to end up adjusting more than half of the appeals that come in. I have no idea what that number is going to be, truly, whether it's 25 or 75%, but we're going to be adjusting a lot because these increases are really, really big. And our approach at Douglas County is going to be to not take a defensive posture, but take an engaging posture with our citizens and really look at what they're telling us and seeing if there's something that we can do for them. And so as your county assessor in Douglas County, that's something that I have the right to direct my staff to do, and we're going to take advantage of that, right? So I encourage people to really look closely at their notice, and if they hate it, they don't like it, they think it's wrong, if there's incorrect characteristics, get that appeal filed. And I think the most important thing to remember is June 8th is the deadline. So I think we're sitting here about a month away from that. So we've got 4 weeks to make that happen. So.
Well, that makes sense. I'm looking at the postcard, and I initially thought that I had to go online and do the appeal, but it leaves me like two very small lines. The reason for appealing the value is, and it's got like a very small text because I don't like the number I see. Is that a valid reason? I mean, what can you give me the answers to the test here? What are we really talking about?
You got it, man. That's all it takes. We need your signature, we need the number you want, and we need some statement as to why. And frankly, if you gave me a number and a signature, that's all I really need. Okay. The fact is, when these appeals come in, there's a set of steps that our staff go through, irregardless of what the appeal is about. And then on top of those steps, we will do whatever else the homeowner or property owner is asking. So for instance, if you say, look, I think the property characteristics are incorrect. I don't have this much basement finish. So our staff will go, that appeal will come in, it'll get processed, assigned to an appraiser. The appraiser will do their typical analysis, which is a market analysis. And on top of that, it will look at whatever you're asking us to look at, be it a particular comp, or the characteristics are wrong, or there's some error calculation calculation error that's being made. So, a common misconception is that you have to do a bunch of homework, and the fact is you don't. And most of the time, homework isn't a waste of time, but it doesn't add to the appeal. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So every citizen's got to weigh how much time they have to do this, but the great news is you really don't have to do anything. What I want to say is the most important information you can give us is tell us what we don't know. Is there something about your property that we're not aware of? There's something unique about your street or your neighborhood that we're not aware of. Point those things out to us and help us help you. And that might help increase your results now, or increase the chance of having a great result. Now, I missed a question from you earlier. I just want to tackle that real quick. Can the value go up? And the answer legally is yes, it can. And I can't speak to how other assessors operate. I just know how our office operates. We will not increase a value due to an appeal under any circumstances unless the situation demands it really by law. And let me give you just one example of that. If a property files an appeal and we're missing buildings, literally on the record, that would be an example where our office might increase value. I would say when we get thousands of appeals each year, and we might increase one or two, maybe, usually none. So that's sort of how it works. If you file an appeal and we find out you've got basement finish and we're missing it, we're not going to increase your value. If you put on a detached garage and we're missing it, we're not going to increase your value. If you've done a whole remodel of your house and we're not aware of that, we're not going to increase your value. So there's really no risk to this unless like we're missing the boat. Like the whole data picture on the property is missing.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you're really helpful. Like you're trying to help out the people of Douglas County, which is fantastic. Would it be? I mean, you're an elected official, right? Would it be accurate to say that you're not a policymaker, though, because you're kind of subject to these other entities, the state legislature, and then all these taxing authorities, right?
100%, Steve. We're not policy makers. We enforce policy. I'd like to say we engage policy because we're experts in the procedure and the bureaucracy of this. And so, from my point of view, on a personal level, I've been arguing for a certain approach that is reduced assessment rates, higher exemptions for seniors, and a whole bunch of other stuff that I've been asking for, none of which is unfortunately happening. But from a job point of view, there are hundreds of laws that the county assessor is required to follow. And our job as a county assessor elected official is to make sure our staff follow those. And unfortunately, when it comes to a situation like this, the laws are very strict. We've got to be at full market value. You must reappraise every 2 years. And so for all the conservatives out there that look at me like, what are you doing, Toby? This is not why we elected you. I agree. I hate this situation. But the first thing I'm going to do in this situation is follow the law. And that's what we're doing here. If the law allowed us a little more freedom, like a limit on increases, we would enforce it in a second. If the law allowed us to skip a reappraisal because of the extreme nature of the situation, we'd gladly take advantage of that. So there's just not a lot of rope that they give us, unfortunately. I'd like to see that change, but until it does, we're kind of stuck with this.
Okay, that makes perfectly good sense. So you're doing everything you can to raise awareness, to help us navigate these waters, and you've given us a great roadmap for that. Let's get into some of what the state legislature is doing now. Right now, Democrats overwhelmingly run the state legislature, and Democrats love higher taxes for various reasons that you and I disagree with. Because I know Representative Lisa Frizzell, who's down there in the Castle Rock area, she's representative for House District 45, and she previously sat in your chair. Was there a bill that she brought forward to address some of these hikes, and what was the outcome of that bill?
Man, I'm so glad you brought that up. We've gone through all this drama the past few months during this session with all these bills, none of which, until just a couple of days ago, have addressed the tax crisis that we have in front of us. It's really been frustrating and incredible to watch. Ironically, the lawmakers have a former assessor in a chair in their midst, and she wrote House Bill 1054, I think, or House, is it 1054? And what that bill did was cap value increases for this reappraisal. For the next 2 years at 5% for each year. Sounds great, right?
Yeah.
5%. That sounds perfect. Like, why not? Go ahead.
Instead of 50, 5% cap instead of
55. And what's really interesting about that is that increase at 5% a year ties generally broadly to inflation over time. It allows for local taxing entities to take advantage of more revenue. It's 5. By the way, it's not 5%. It's 5% plus growth. So if you have a growing district, you get the advantage of that revenue plus the 5% cap for 2 years. And this bill did not rewrite the property tax system like Senate Bill 303 does. It did not make any permanent change. It just recognized that we're in a black swan, perfect storm event, and we've got to do something about it now. And why not do something simple that the people understand, that everyone can live with, and that everyone can afford? And so it got put into a committee, Representative Frizzell's committee, and it was killed in committee along near party line votes. I think they got one Democrat to join it, but it still got killed. So it never even got to the floor. That was early in the session. All they need to do was let that get to the floor. They could have amended it, adjusted it a little bit. They didn't even let the discussion happen. It's really insane that bill didn't get any progress beyond the committee that it was put into, because it was an opportunity for us to have a bigger discussion about it and really do something meaningful for citizens, and they failed, frankly.
Well, and I mean, that's not totally surprising, though. I mean, if you think about Democrats and the progressive left wing of their party, which is just about everybody now, they believe fundamentally that they're better stewards of your money than Toby and Steve are. And so why, hey, we get more tax money? Great. Look at all the new projects. Look at what we can do for the homeless. Look at what we can do for whatever their pet project is.
I think their behavior this year proves that theory out. There's no question that they're looking forward to additional revenue because they're getting it at the state level in a massive way. Yeah. And there's also no question that they're not interested really in viewing this as a crisis, which it is, and dealing with it in a meaningful way.
Well, I'm sure there's somebody somewhere watching this that's a Democrat or votes Democrat, independent that votes Democrat. And, maybe, you and I look at the situation and say, well, elections have consequences. You vote overwhelmingly for Democrats and you're going to get this as a result, much higher taxes coming out of your pocket for whatever government services that are out there, and whether that those government services are accountable back to us or they're effective. Those are obviously well outside the bounds here. But some people might say, well, this is great. I'm glad to give more money to the state. What's your response there?
Why? Why would you want that to happen? Well, I do not understand that. I think the only people that want that to happen are people who don't understand what happens to your money, which is it gets blown, to be honest. And it's
somebody's got to tell you, you've got a government salary. I mean, right? I mean,
yeah. Well, I'll be happy to take a pay cut if that's what they want to help to do something about the situation, man. I gotta point this out. If the roles were reversed, because the Democrats, as you mentioned, have a de facto supermajority. They control everything, the progress of every bill, every detail about every bill. This is not a negotiating session. The Republicans have zero power at the moment, and the Democrats control everything. And if the roles were reversed, we would not be talking about this today, Steve, because this would have been resolved weeks ago. And we might be in the situation, the worst case scenario would be is the assessor would be sending out these notices, yeah, your value went up 50%, but your taxes are going up 5%. So don't worry about it. We got you. That's what would be happening if the roles were reversed. But we're in this situation because of who we've elected and who's running the state at the state level right now. And for any of them to say that they don't want your money is just a straight up falsehood, because everything that behavior that's taking place this year at the state level has indicated they do want this money. They want it to save this and to save that and to protect this and to protect that, rather than return it to us, the citizens.
Now, if the mill were to come down for the Highlands Ranch Metro District, and that's just one very small piece of a much larger framework, is something stopping a left-winger from writing a check to the Highlands Ranch Metro District? You know what? I'm incensed that my taxes went down and we need these government services. Can they still write a check for the difference?
Heck yes, they can. But do you think they will, Steve? Do you think they will?
Oh, absolutely not. I mean, but it's insane. The whole conversation's insane. But of course, we're in 2023. So
right. It's
okay.
It's part of the picture now. Insanity is part of our lives.
So Representative Frizzell's bill, it failed, and this puts us on a crash course with the future, right? Which is, hey, if the state legislature does not act, if nothing changes, then we're going to see this tremendous tax increase. And that brings us to what you referenced earlier, Senate Bill 303. What is that? Where is it coming from? What does it achieve or not achieve?
Well, I think I'll start by saying Senate Bill 303 is 60 pages of bureaucratic nonsense, pardon my language, but that's what it is. And it does a lot of things, and we could probably speak for an hour about that. So it's a little bit of a challenge to identify all the things that it does. But I think I've got to at least touch on the high points. And I don't want to pretend that there is nothing good in it, because there are some good things in it. I think the trouble I have is all the things that are good in it, they could have done separately in individual bills 2 months ago. One of those things, if we want to start with the positive aspects of it, is an expansion of the senior property tax exemption. So for many years, that exemption was $100,000 off of actual value. So if you're a senior and you were approved for this program, by the way, to be approved for the program, you have to have owned and lived in your house for 10 years and be 65 years of age or older. And if you're in the program, you have $100,000 off the actual value, which is the assessor's value in your property. So if you have a $600,000 property, you would be paying taxes on $500,000. One of the things this bill does is increase that number to $140,000. So we've been pushing for that number to be doubled for several years. So they finally put a little bit on that. So instead of that $600,000 house being taxed at $500,000, it'd be taxed at $460,000, and that's a good thing.
Yep. And for people that have fixed income, that seems like
yes, yeah. The question I would ask you is, if your $600,000 house is going to $900,000, how much does that extra $40,000 help? And I would argue not enough. What I would argue is they should have written a separate bill on senior exemption and doubled the adjustment. Because if you look at what seniors on fixed income are going through at the moment with increased interest rates, increased prices really on everything that we buy, increased homeowners insurance, increased costs in medication, and so on and so forth. Steve, you know, the list goes on and on. Everything's more expensive, and everything in housing is twice as expensive. Pricing, interest rates, insurance, taxes. So $40,000 on top of all that, to me, is like they're doing something to get the seniors to vote for this. And that's the number they came up with, which convinced them that they could get sort of seniors on board with it. There is another thing which is good about this, and that is it decreases the non-residential assessment rate, what we call the commercial assessment rate, a little bit this year, and then it looks forward and creates a ratcheting downward on the commercial assessment rate each reappraisal for the next 10 years. So it's 5 ratchets down on the commercial assessment rate. And that's something that's way overdue. That should have happened 20 years ago. The commercial assessment rate due to Gallagher has been locked at 29% until we repealed Gallagher in 2020. The only benefit we have in repealing Gallagher was that. That's it. It's the only benefit we got out of repealing Gallagher. And here we are in 2023, and they're finally doing something about it. So that part is good. The rest of the hour, we could talk about why Senate Bill 303 has a lot of pain in it. And I don't, frankly, even know where to get started, Steve.
Okay. I'm just, again, a guy in the suburbs reading the news. My takeaway is, hey, there's this, the people of Colorado are on the Titanic headed towards an iceberg. You've been the guy at the watch, like ringing the bell, and nobody's adjusted course. It's just full steam ahead. Now, I think today's the last day of the state legislature in session, May 8th. Okay. Yeah. Now, all of a sudden, hey, the governor rides in on his white horse and says, guys, I got a solution for you. It's Senate Bill 303. Now, I don't know if it actually came from the governor or if he's just behind the scenes shepherding this thing, but essentially, yeah, it's fixing the problem by giving us our own money back, meaning the money that we would have gotten from Tabor, which is, for people that are new to Colorado, that's the acronym for the Taxpayer Bill of Rights, a unique thing that's unique to Colorado. I don't know that any other state has something like Tabor, but this has been part of the landscape here in Colorado since 1992. So the money that we would get back from Tabor would be applied towards this property tax issue, essentially ameliorating the effectiveness of. Is that right?
You got it. There's no question about that whatsoever. No one can make a plausible argument that is not happening. What you just stated is fact. It undermines Tabor in a major sneaky, frankly, creepy way, because we are telling everyone we're going to give you a tax break, and we're going to not tell you is that we're going to take your Tabor refund to fund that tax break. And what we're also not going to tell you is the reality of the tax break isn't that much. Let me start there on this question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The governor's team is out there saying this is going to reduce your tax increase by 50%. First of all, listen to that. This is going to reduce your tax increase by 50%. Why doesn't it just stop the tax increase? Why are you reducing a 50% tax increase by 50%? Worse, it's not doing that. We've crunched the numbers in my office, and we can't see how they get to that. The best thing I can see this bill is doing is decreasing the tax increase by maybe 10%.
Oh, what a deal.
Isn't it? So if your taxes are headed for a 40% increase, why don't we trim it to 30?
And be grateful.
Right, and be grateful about it. That's how I view it. Okay. The only way that number expands, in other words, that their decrease expands, is through local authority action. Well, that's not the governor or the lawmakers doing anything. That's the local authorities taking it into their own hands, which they already have the right to do, as we discussed earlier. So again, I can't get to this result that the Democrats are saying that this is a major savings for you. It's going to really lower your tax bill, and it's going to really deal with this situation. The headline this year is about homes and homeowners. They didn't change the valuation rules. They didn't update the reappraisal rules. So county assessors are forced to go through this thing, which is really just reflecting what the market is doing, which is 40, 50, 60% increases. By the way, statewide, these increases are up to 100%. There are some increases in the resort counties where you have condominiums doubling. In Douglas County, the vast majority of increases are between 30 and 60, with a median somewhere there and the average somewhere in the 40s, just to paint a picture of where we're at. The highest increase we've had in reappraisals in the past, going back decades, has been in the 20%. So even the lowest increase that we're getting across the state in the 30s is higher than anything we've ever experienced before. And their response to that is to say, okay, we're going to trim a little off the top, and then we're going to take Tabor to pay for it. It's really incredible the courage that they're showing in doing that.
Wow. So if this bill were to pass, and let's just speculate that it does, how does Prop HH fit into that picture? Is that part of the same thing, or is that a separate effort? Are you familiar with Prop HH?
I sure am. And what Senate Bill 303 really is a referendum. It's a referral to the voters. So they're going to pass that bill today in some form, probably in its current form, and not allow any amendments that are beneficial to it. But we'll see. And what the passing and signing to that bill is going to do is put this issue not into law, but it's going to put it on the ballot in November for us all to vote for. And so going back a while ago when I said, the real thing that citizens have right now is to appeal to your county assessor, that's because the rest of the tax formula is going to be a big discussion for the rest of the year. So for now, today, before June 8th, go ahead and file your appeal, but get ready for a fight, because we're going to be talking about this for the rest of the year. And the rest of the year, the second components will get determined. What is your assessment rate and what is your mill levy? And so there's a lot to come. Property HH is Senate Bill 303, when passed, in the form of a ballot measure for us all to vote on. And then we'll get a chance to say yes or no in November.
Okay, that makes a great deal of sense. So you and I both fully expect, because again, the state legislature is completely owned and operated by left-wing Democrats. That will pass. 303 will pass, even though we don't want it to. And that will put Prop HH on the ballot, which really takes this issue of, do you want to use your Tabor funds to pay for your property tax increase? Yes or no? I mean, simply put.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Easy.
Yeah, that's
simple.
it.
You said this was complicated.
Yeah. Well, you don't leave out the fact that it's that they're going to use Tabor to save. They use a lot of Tabor dollars to save you a little bit of money, because we're still going to have a property tax increase. It doesn't. Let me put it this way: the current assessment rate, or last year's residential assessment rate, was 6.95. So just think about that number in your head: 6.95.
Yep.
What Senate Bill 303 does is reduce it to 6.7. So 6.95 to 6.7. It's 25 basis points. All right. That's like, Steve, we're talking about 3 or 4%. That's all we're talking about, 3, 4, or 5%. So we all have these 30, 40, 50, 70% increases in our value. And they're going to be nice and give us a 4% adjustment on our assessment rate. So all this talk about this bill saving our taxation, it's not.
But when the governor runs for president, he'll be able to say he's a tax cutter. I mean, he's basically the second coming of JFK and Reagan, right?
Yeah, no comment. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, hey, okay, I'm thinking about, we've touched on Gallagher. I don't know that I want to go any farther on Gallagher, just because if I guess anybody still listening to this, an hour in, is probably into the weeds anyway. So maybe we could talk about Gallagher, but we've talked about Tabor. We've talked about 303. We've talked about steps that people can take to affect their tax profile. What haven't we talked about? What will we still need to address?
Well, I think we have to touch on Tabor and Gallagher, if you would allow me, just for a sentence or two. Gallagher was great in that it did one simple thing. Over decades, as residential property values increased, it forced automatically by formula the residential assessment rate down. And so as values went up by big numbers over the years, which they have in Colorado because we all love this state and lots of people wanted to move here, the residential assessment rate went downward. And in repealing it, that ratcheting effect has been removed. And so now the assessment rate is in the hands of the state lawmakers. And they have today, they could fix this issue by amending Senate Bill 303 and lowering the residential assessment rate as Gallagher would. And then the problem is solved. They can imagine a whole bunch of other problems that they think might happen, but they wouldn't. The problem for homeowners would be solved. But they won't do that. They won't do that because they need the money or want the money. On Tabor, here are my thoughts on Tabor. I just want to say one thing about it. Unfortunately, Tabor has been eroded in many ways over the years. And for those of us that have been here a long time and maybe don't pay as much attention as I do about it, there's this false impression that Tabor will protect us. And the fact is, Tabor will not protect us because it's really been eroded over the years. It will protect some people in some areas. Highlands Ranch Metropolitan District, I believe, is still Tabor restricted. And so you chose a great neighborhood to live in, Steve, and that I am fairly certain Highlands Ranch Metropolitan District will end up with a lower levy than you have this year, next year, when these values are applied. So those are just two quick thoughts about Tabor and Gallagher. They're really important parts of this conversation.
Deeply appreciate your willingness to jump on today and talk about this. I mean, it's a complicated issue, right? And our goal with this podcast is to communicate as broadly to as many people as possible, because you can, if you're online and you're following the discussion on Twitter or Instagram, probably lesser extent Facebook, you're only getting snapshots. And I've seen some of the news segments, they'll do like a 3-minute piece, and they're trying to describe this pretty big problem. And so what we're trying to achieve with this conversation is a level of detail and thoroughness that we're not going to get from any place else. And I think you've been effective at communicating, what the problem set here is. So I really do appreciate that. Anything else that you would like to share while we've got you?
I think I would conclude by saying what a citizen can do now is work with engage their county assessor to talk about their assessment. That's what's right in front of you. Certainly speaking to your legislator about the Senate bill 303 is great, but given that we expect that to pass today, if it's not already done, um, that ship may have sailed. So engage your county assessor, call them, ask questions, get on their website, mine if you're in Douglas County, and see if there's something that we can do about your assessment if you're not liking it. And then there's lots more to talk about for the rest of the year, and we'll keep the conversation going.
Absolutely. Thank you, Toby. We'll definitely continue this conversation and look forward to having you back soon. Thank you so much for today and for what you're doing for Douglas County.
Thank you, Steve. It's been a pleasure. Look forward to doing it again.